Welcome to Complete Intro to Motion Design, where you'll learn everything you need to know to get started in the world of motion graphics. Let's do it.
TipTut.
Hello everybody and welcome back to TipTut. Today we are taking our first steps on our journey into complete motion design, or a complete intro to motion design. You've seen in the header there, the intro, that the thing we're going to be animating is this little lighter character in the forest. This is something that I've drawn in Procreate on the iPad. But as far as you're concerned, you can start with a sketch on paper. It doesn't really matter. We're going to take this in a series of videos from conceptual sketch all the way through to a completed animated piece inside of After Effects. Now, the first thing I did when I got started was to draw some little concepts down, and you can see here that eventually I decided on this sort of lighter character toasting a marshmallow on his own flame, and I took that into Procreate and I just did a little sketch of that. I actually did do a complete finished version in Procreate just to see what that was going to look like and to see whether I would enjoy it and want to work with it, which I decided I did. So you'll be able to download this from my website, but if you want to, you can absolutely do this with your own sketch, your own drawing as well. It can be whatever you want, and I do highly recommend you do that. So that's enough preamble. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little time lapse of me doing the sketch, and let's jump right into the first step, which, as you saw in the title card, is sketching an illustration. We've done the sketching, it's time for the illustration. So here we are inside Illustrator. I've just booted up Illustrator here, it'll be on the home page. And as you can see from my assets folder that I've got here, I have my original sketch, and I also have the an example of the finished artwork here, which I created in Procreate. This is the thing that we're going to be recreating step by step, because I don't want to just do a Procreate tutorial. I want to assume you guys don't have access to that. So all I've done is I've just taken my sketch layer that I'm going to be bringing into Illustrator, and we're going to rebuild that in Illustrator. So I'm going to drag and drop my sketch.png into Illustrator, and that's going to create a file for us here. Now, just for my peace of mind, what I'm going to do is grab my artboard tool, and I'm just going to increase my artboard to the size of my artwork, like so. That gives us 2048 pixels to work with, which is quite a large amount. Now, if you're very new to Illustrator and you're very new to sort of this sort of stuff in general, then I'd recommend that you watch my Intro to Illustrator series, which I'll link in the video now. That'll just get you to grips with using Illustrator and using this software, which I will explain a little bit, but not in a tremendous amount of detail because there's so much to get through anyway. So without any further ado, let's jump in. So we're going to build this in a way that will allow us to take it first into Photoshop and then secondly into After Effects. And what that means is we have to work quite carefully with our layers palette down here. What I will do is I'll just shift myself for this video, the little camera version of me. I'm going to go and bring me over here to this side, just because our layers palette is down there and we need to know what buttons I'm clicking. So to bring this sort of thing into After Effects, what you need to do is make sure that all of your content that you want to be separate needs to be on separate layers. So the first thing we should do is create a bunch of layers. Now, creating groups inside these layers is fine, but it won't be interpreted as editable when you bring it into Photoshop. So you need to make sure that all your separate assets are on your separate layers. Secondly, I'm going to be using a brilliant color palette by Gigantic. Again, I will link him now. And Gigantic is a brilliant illustrator, and he gives this color palette away for free on his website, and I just think it's fantastic. I use it for a lot of my stuff. So we're just going to pop that out there just for reference as well. You can grab that from his website if you go and download it. So I'm going to take this sketch here, okay? And the first thing I'm going to do is drag that layer to the top of the screen, and I'm going to rename it Sketch because naming things is important. And then I'm also going to twirl this down, and I'm going to change its opacity. I don't like this setup. I've just bought a new PC, so my setup isn't complete yet. I'm going to drag my layers palette under my properties palette, just so I've got these options separate. When I select the sketch layer, I'm going to drop its opacity down so we can start to see through it. It's just a reference. I'm also going to lock it so I can't accidentally select it, and twirl it down again so it's not too distracting. Okay, so let's take a look at our files here. Now I'm just going to bring this other one up for reference, just on the other screen. And we're going to crack right on. So first things first, in Illustrator, we're only making the flat colors. We're going to add all of this like sort of nice gradient stuff here that you've seen in Photoshop and then eventually After Effects. So first things first, we're going to work from the bottom up. We're going to make sure we have our bottom layer selected and we're going to call this sky. Then we're just going to draw a box with our rectangle tool and using our grab handles here, we're just going to make that fill our canvas. And then I'm just going to drag it up to about that size because I know that's where the sky stops and that's all we really need to see. I'm just going to pop a basic blue color from my palette there. And I did that just by hitting I for the eyedropper and clicking on the palette. Okay. Separately to this sky, we're going to add texture to it and some lines, but we're probably going to add all these lines in After Effects later. However, we will do them on the same layer here and we'll call them sky lines. Whilst these will probably be rebuilt, I'm going to build them here quickly. I'm not going to worry too much about how they look. I'm just going to grab the blob brush tool that I've got here, boom, 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 like so. Make sure that I'm happy with it. And I'm going to grab a nice dark blue. And using my blob brush tool, I'm just going to bring some of these lines in that we have from that original. Just using the mouse. Like I said, we're going to be rebuilding these. So accuracy isn't too important. Just as long as you're happy with the way they look roughly. Okay, perfect. That's the sky done, so I'm going to hide those layers. Next up is the moon. So we need moon. And we'll need a layer for moon lines. And probably what I will be doing is bringing sort of this reference file into After Effects anyway. So we've got those original lines on there. So the moon is a circle. We'll grab our ellipse tool here and holding Alt and Shift, we'll just click and drag until we get the rough size that we want. And then pressing I, we can select a nice moon color. That one seems to work. We're going to add quite a bit of shading to this along the bottom and highlighting and also some lines along there as well. So I did accidentally just draw that on moon lines though. So I'll cut that with Control X and I'll select my moons layer and I'll paste it in place with Control F. On top of that, we'll go to the moon lines layer. We'll grab our slightly darker color here. We'll go Shift B to bring up our blob brush again. And we'll just draw in some rough lines. Again, just for reference, because we're going to be redoing those. So don't worry if they look a bit messy. We will, however, grab all of these shapes, and this is the reason we do it with the blob brush. And we will copy the moon on top. So Control C on that moon, go to the moon lines layer, Control F, and that will paste it on top of these lines. Now, if we Shift select all 4 of these lines, we can do right click and then make compound path. And that tells Illustrator to treat these as a single shape, meaning when we select this moon that's on top and we select these lines that are underneath and we bring up Pathfinder in our properties palette, we can choose intersect and that will retain only the intersecting sections. And when you reapply the color, you'll be able to see, there you go. We've got the lines now cut off to the shape of our moon, which is really helpful. Okay, so what is next then? Next up is creating the mountains. So we'll do that there. Mountains layer here. And then I'm pretty sure there's some lines on those too. So we'll just bring up mountains lines. And we'll just start to bring these in. Now, because this is a really rough sketch, what we're going to do is just use the pen tool on our mountains layer. And we're going to choose sort of this nice dark green color, making sure that it looks good against our sky. So we'll turn our sky back on briefly. And grab our pen tool. And if you long press on the pen tool, it should bring up some other options. Oops, sorry, not the pen tool. Beneath it, the pen tool, there is the curvature tool. It used to be under the pen. And what this does is it allows you to work with like the pen tool by clicking, but just clicking around and it will automatically adjust and create the curves for you, which you might find quite useful. So I'm going to select this nice dark color here. And with my curvature tool, I'm going to zoom in. And I'm just going to start trying to draw in a nice mountain shape. Like that, maybe. And what this does is it ensures that the lines you do have are really smooth. Now, this is going to be hidden behind the others. So I'm just going to grab my normal pen tool now, select that anchor point, and I'm just going to square off this little mountain. Okay, that's good. On that, there are some darker lines. So we'll do the same thing we did with the moon. We'll go onto the mountain lines layer. We'll grab our brush tool with Shift B. We'll zoom in using Control Plus there, and we'll just start drawing in some reference lines. Seems good to me. Again, these are going to be removed in the final thing and reapplied in After Effects. So we're not spending a lot of time on them. I'm going to grab all 6 of these and make them a compound path. We'll copy and paste in place on the mountain lines layer. The other mountain, we'll choose intersect and we'll reapply that dark color. And there is our first mountain in the background there. So now we need to start looking at drawing the actual foreground. So that'll be on top. We'll just call this foreground. And then there'll be some lines on that. So that'll be foreground lines. And on our foreground layer, we'll select this nice dark blue here. And again, with our curvature tool, we're just going to dive right in. So there's a little bit of a lump, a little bit of a hill here. So we'll just make sure to include that. Starts to curve back down again before it comes up. I'm not worrying too much about following the sketch incredibly accurately because it's a sketch and we can neaten things up to our heart's desire. Now this one comes all the way down, so we're going to fill the canvas with that. Pressing V there to bring up the selection tool, and we've got our mountain. So let's grab our foreground lines. We'll make that in this nice dark color. Shift B to bring up the blob brush, and I'm pretty sure I just did a couple sort of along there like that. Again, not worrying too much because we're going to be replacing these. They're just there for reference. Okay, good. Let's select both of those, right click, make compound path, copy the foreground underneath, paste it in place with Control F on the foreground layer, select the lines, choose intersect from the Pathfinder menu and reapply that dark color. There we go. So that's pretty much the process for this entire section. So I'm just going to focus a bit more now on building this character because he's got more intricacies to him, if that makes sense. So we'll build the foreground quickly and then we'll build the character after that. So I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to put a layer for trees. And I'm just going to quickly, with the pen tool this time, because I need that bit of lumpiness to it, I'm just going to start to draw in these trees. Again, from the sketch here, being quite rough. And if you click, it will create an angled point, like so. But if you click and drag, it will create a curved point, which is quite useful. So I'm just doing quick little drags here, just to create a bumpy but still curved main line. And then we'll go up to the top. Now, what I'm probably going to do at the end, thinking about all these lines here, is I'm going to go back through with my graphics tablet and I'm going to neaten them up. But if you don't have access to that, you could do these lines in the same way that I'm doing these pen tools. You can see in our original sketch here, excuse me, if I go and zoom in a little bit, you can see that they differ in thickness a little bit. They differ in sort of angle. So what you could do instead of just drawing a flat line is you could grab your pen tool. You could start drawing in some curves like so. And then if you hold Alt, you can adjust a single axis point here. And what that will allow you to do is go back on yourself. Oops. And start to follow around like so. I just wanted to show you a way to create these without a graphics tablet, which doesn't have obviously pressure sensitivity. But I'll be going through and I'll be creating these again with a graphics tablet that does have pressure sensitivity just because it's quicker for me. So that's how you'd recreate those lines. That's why I'm doing them so roughly. So we've got our tree here. It looks a little bit janky to me though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to choose simplify. What that's going to do is it's just going to even out by removing some of these points here. It's just going to even out some of those sections. Reduce to 25 points. That's just going to smooth out some of those jagged edges there. Do the same thing for this tree on the other side then. We'll keep this on the same layer. And I'm just clicking around here, clicking and dragging, clicking by itself, just to get the edges of these trees in. Okay, looking pretty good. That's not bad. We'll just extend that a little bit further than we need to, just to make sure that it fills the page. And we'll cut out this little section. Nice. There we go. So those are our front trees. They will also have lines on them. If I remember correctly, I closed my reference image, so we'll just reopen that back up. Yep, these have got lines all over them. So we'll just add in some guidelines there. Trees, lines. However, for these two trees, we're going to have to make those a compound path so that we can copy and paste them. We're going to grab our tree lines layer from over here. We're going to grab a lighter color this time, I think it is. I think it's actually this same purplish blue here. And we're just going to start drawing in some lines with our blob brush. Like so. There's one like here-ish. There's one about there. There's a couple that swim down like that. Some down here. And a couple of big sweepers. Like that. Nice. Then over here we've got some stuff. Again, being very rough here because I'm going to redo them. Just for reference. Draw that guy in. Couple up here. Swinging around. Boop, boop. Nice. That looks pretty good. So for simplicity here, I'm just going to click this little dot next to the layer, which selects everything on that layer. Right click, make compound path. I'm going to grab my trees with Control C, paste them on the tree lines layer with Control F. Select both, right click. Sorry, not right click, go to Pathfinder, choose intersect. And then we've got our intersecting shapes that we will grab the color for here. And there we go. We've got our lines. Looking pretty good. Let's quickly do these plants and then we'll work on to the character here. So we need to move some of these layers above tree lines. Actually, these can stay below, I think. We'll call this one vines. And luckily, these don't really have any textures on them. So we can literally just grab our pen tool, like so. And I'm just going to click and drag here until that guy lines up. And then bring that option up here with a single click. Another single click creates another harsh edge. And then a click and drag here creates that vine. So this is the technique you'd use to create these lines if you didn't have a graphics tablet. There is one of our vines. Looks pretty good. Just going to hide some of these background layers so they don't get too distracting here. Grab all these guys off, maybe even turn off the trees and the trees lines. Draw these ones over here. With the pen tool, again, single click, click and drag at the bottom of that apex, dragging around until you get the line that you want. Single click again, adjustment there. Dragging up. Now here you can see that I need to go way past in order to get the line that I want. That's fine, because we can just connect that there. And then we can draw a rectangle just to cut off this little section. Select both shapes and choose minus front. And that will cut that off for us nice and simply. So let's duplicate this one. Actually, let's just draw it again because it will shrink if we duplicate it. So we will grab our second vine, clicking and dragging. And then here I'm going to hold Alt to create that nice sharp right angle. Got our vine there and connecting it up like so. Cool. Those vines look pretty good. So I'm just going to, on the same layer, choose my curvature, my blob brush tool. And I'm going to see if I can paint these in. If I make these a little bit smaller. Does that look all right? That doesn't look too bad, actually. So I'm just going to Good thing about this style of artwork is that it is quite wobbly, so it doesn't really matter if it looks wobbly. So like a hand-drawn illustration style. Looks pretty good. Remembering, of course, these endpoints are going to be behind the tree line, so that's totally fine. And there we have our vines. Let's turn all these layers back on. Like so. Boom, looking pretty good. If we hide our sketch briefly, we can see what we've got going on here. Looking not too bad so far, actually. Let's grab, however, our spare layer and add a few more. Because we haven't even done our character yet, and we haven't even done our plants yet. So we're going to do the plants down here by selecting layer 9. I'm going to call this one Plant Base. Turn our sketch back on. And we're going to start to draw these little plants. Now, I am going to hide these tree layers, and I'm going to draw a bit behind them. Because when we come to animate this, we might expose this area a little bit. And whilst there's nothing in this area now, there might be later. So we'll start off with our smaller plant here. What I'm going to do is just draw the rough shape that I want for the leaf. I'm going to hold Alt to shorten this handle here so that I can more easily get the shape that I want. I'm going to drag these handles around and boom. There is our leaf shape. I'm going to make sure that this line turns to a fill, and I'm going to make this a nice bright red and press V to come out of that shape. Now, here's the fun bit. Let's duplicate this by holding Alt and Shift, right-clicking it using Transform and Reflect. We want Reflect vertically to flop that around there. And we're just then going to grab this guy and rotate him a little bit to bring him down. Like so. Now, you might want these all on separate layers, just so you can grade them individually. So what I'm going to do is cut that, and I'm going to rename this one Leaf. And on the layer above it, I'm going to paste in place Leaf 2. Then I'm going to grab my pen tool again on the layer above, and we're going to draw this leaf. And guess what we're going to call that one? It's going to be Leaf 3. Bam. Cool. Now we just need to cut out these little sections here. And for that, I'm going to do it really simply. I'm going to grab my pen tool again. I'm going to draw a shape holding Alt there to change the angle. And I'm just going to draw a bunch of triangles that make the cutouts that I want. So we're just going to bring this guy in like that, bring him around. This guy we're going to bring in, bring that around. There we go. Then I'm going to grab my leaf layer. I'm going to grab one of my triangles, and I'm just going to hit minus front. And I'm going to do that again a few more times. Oops. I'm going to grab all of these, cut them, and paste them in place again. And that then makes sure they're all on top, so that when I do grab both of these and hit minus front, it actually minuses the triangle. Control X, Control F, cut. Control X, Control F, Shift, cut. And there we have one of our leaves. So this one, I want the cuts to be in a slightly different place, which is why I'm not duplicating it. I'm going to make sure that I'm still on the correct layer. Oops, that one is not. So we'll cut that one. We'll pop that on its own layer down there. And just for simplicity, we'll actually hide those other ones for now. Make sure we're on the right layer here. Grab that pen tool. Holding Alt to change the angle. Pressing V to come out of it and P to go back in. Holding Alt. And cutting out these shapes by selecting both, minus front. Selecting both, minus front. Good. Let's do this bottom leaf quickly. There's only one cut out here, luckily. Otherwise, we'd be here all day. And we'll cut out that one as well. Perfect. Take a look at them. And there we have our 3 leaves. Again, a lot of the shading that you see here is all going to be applied in a later section in Photoshop, so we don't have to worry about that for now. On top of these then, we're going to need these 2 stalks. So we'll make a layer for stalks, which we will spell correctly. And we're just going to use our blob brush. Shift and B brings up the blob brush. Make sure we're on the right color. So I'm going to grab this sort of dark red color from up here. And I'm just going to draw a nice smooth line. Oop. Nice smooth couple of lines here. Then I'm going to grab my rounded rectangle tool by going to the rectangle here. I'm going to draw the rough shape that I want for the head. And then there's these little circles that I can just drag in and it creates a perfect rounded rectangle. So if I invert that to show a fill, I can start placing these wherever my little heart desires. Every plant needs a friend, so we're going to make ourselves a bigger friend. To do so, I'm just going to grab all these layers like this, and I'm going to duplicate them. Bam. Then I can grab them again and move them over here. I will, however, because it's behind it, grab all these copies and just drag them below like that. Now we can scale this up. Just saves us a little bit of time. Oops, excuse me. Grab the wrong layer there. Position that in place. Looks pretty good. Let's just rotate it a little bit. Oops, I misclicked again there. Rotate those a little bit, just so they're not exactly the same. We'll have to come back into these rounded rectangles and make sure that they're still fully converted like that. And we'll paste the third one in here as well, since the original design had 3. And we'll grab our blob brush and we'll just draw in that final stalk. Oops, we'll make that final stalk the same thickness as the rest. Just pressing open and close square bracket there to shrink or grow this little preview option. Okay. We will quickly re-enable those trees. And we will quickly recolor these leaves because in the original one, it was like a purplish color, not a reddish color. So we'll grab like this kind of nice purple here. We'll leave these the same color though. I think that looks good. And we'll briefly turn off the sketch to see where we are. So that's everything except for the character done. Now, this is already going to be a long video. It's already half an hour long, but I think it's important that we do all of this step in one video for you guys so it's easy to consume. Feel free to pause and come back at another time, but we're just going to crack on and create this character now because we've done all of the background setup. We now just need to do this guy, and this guy is going to be a little bit more complicated, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I'm going to take a sip of tea and we're going to carry on. Okay, so we're going to grab our sketch layer here, make sure that's still on top, and we're going to start drawing our little dude. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure, first of all, I'm going to name this layer palette. And I'm going to make sure that my character, because he doesn't actually touch anything else in the scene at the moment, I'm going to pop him on top just for simplicity here. But when you're done, you're going to want to drag him back down so that he's at least below the trees layer, so that when we come to animate it later on, he's in the right place. What I'm going to do, however, is grab all of these layers we haven't used yet, and I'm just going to pop them right at the top, just so that I know that I can sort of ignore everything underneath the palette layer for now. Right, let's get started then. So we're going to draw the trunk he's sitting on first. We're going to need a layer for the trunk, and we'll probably need a layer for the trunk's shadow as a separate thing. So we'll call this guy trunk shadow, and we'll just get cracking. Now this consists of a few shapes, but I'm just going to pop them all in the same layer because I know I'm not really going to need to shade them any differently. So we'll just do that now. I have a bit of a guesstimate there as to what that trunk's line is behind him, but that's okay. It's a straight line, doesn't matter because we're not going to see it anyway. So I'm just using the same techniques we did before here. Just going to zoom in and make sure I get this guy looking somewhat good. Dragging and clicking. And as you can see, I'm sort of just feeling it out. It might not be exactly the same as the original sketch, but that's okay because it is a sketch. Bam, that looks pretty good to me, apart from it's wildly the wrong color. So we'll just grab this nice sort of turquoise looking color here, and we'll leave it at that. Now we need our little ends here. So we're just going to grab on the same layer, grab a pen tool, and we're just going to create a new shape, making sure nothing's selected. We're just going to sort of roughly line out what we've got going on. Holding Control there to edit an existing point. And then holding Alt to just edit one branch off that existing point. Then copy with Control C, paste with Control F, select both, choose intersect, and I can now choose my darker color for the end of the log there. Cool, looks pretty good. We know that it's overlapping. And for this one, we can just grab a little ellipse and rotate it so that it lines up with the edges here. And that's it. So there is the log. We're happy with that. We do need to add some log lines, however. So we'll do that now. Trunk lines, not trunk lines, trunk lines. These are brighter colors. So we'll do that now. We'll grab our nice bright green here. We'll grab our blob brush and we'll start to just, oops. Well, first of all, make sure it's not that fat. We'll just shrink it down to the same size over here. Again, we'll probably be redoing these. So just going to pop them in quickly for reference. Like so. Grab all of them by selecting the trunk lines layer, probably the easiest way. Right click, compound path. Now we're going to take this shape, Control C, paste here, Control F. Oops, did that still on the same layer. Paste here, Control F, and then intersect up here. Quickly reapply that light color. And then we'll just take this shape here, we'll cut that and we'll paste that on the trunk lines layer as well so that it's above those lines there. Perfect. That is the log done. We do have some lines on the floor in our original one. So we will quickly pop those in as well. We'll just call them a new layer underneath the trunk shadow layer. And we'll call these trunk shadow lines. Grab our blob brush tool. They look like they're the same color, if not this kind of blue instead. And these look to be a little bit thinner, so we'll just do them that for consistency. Again, we will absolutely be redoing these, so don't worry too much. Yours, you'll obviously get right first time. Mine, I'm going to redo with my pen later on. So they are just for reference. Let's actually grab all of these, put them in a more convenient place with Control X. We can delete our trunk shadows layer because I don't know what I was thinking. We want to go and paste them all on the foreground lines layer with Control F. There you go, much better. Trunk lines, done. So now we need to start thinking about our character. And he is probably the most complicated part of this section because we need to think about how he's going to animate and move. The rest of these animation bits are just going to sort of slide around the page. Whereas this guy is going to have individual animated elements for his like arms and his flames and things like that. We also need to think about whether we're going to have this lid flapping down, that sort of thing. So basically we're going to treat him as separate as possible. And we could, if you wanted to, build him in his own little file to make sure he's not too difficult. But we're going to build him in the same file just for simplicity here. Before I do that, however, I keep forgetting this trunk's shadow. So we'll just quickly pop him in. Like this. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. In he goes. Cool. We will make that almost black and we will reduce the opacity of that layer down to about 30%. There we go. Trunk shadow done. Let's start on our lighter boy. Okay, so first things first, we probably want to do the body. That's probably going to be the first thing. So we'll just call this one body. And we're just going to use the pen tool again. You could, if you wanted to, make a bit more of a rigid shape, use the rectangle tool, and then using your direct selection tool, if we just make him the right color. Choose your direct selection tool up here and individually move around these points if you wanted to. That creates something a little bit too rigid for me though. I don't really like that. he looks too square, you know, compared to the rest of like this organic design. You might want that. You might want that because it sort of creates a nice contrast. But me, I think I'm going to just draw this guy using the pen tool. So we're going to come in and grab the body. We're just going to choose the main sections of the body here. So it's going to be starting like this, adding little bits of curve to his body, just so it's not quite so rigid, you know. We'll worry about his legs in another step. And make sure to include all of the sections that this sort of bit is attached to, because that's going to make our life a bit easier later down the line when it comes to do all of the shading and that sort of thing. So that's the main section of the body. On the other bit, we're going to want a layer for the body right. Basically any section that's going to have its own individual bit of shading on it. So for the body right, we're going to make sure nothing's selected, just so that when we grab our pen tool and we click the same point as before, we don't accidentally select it. We're going to start where there is no point, like so, and then we're going to overlap there. You can bring this out because we're going to use this clipping mask technique that we had from before, like so, and then we're going to join up that section like that. We'll paint this a nice dark color just so we can see the difference originally, and then we will copy, paste in place on the body right layer, and choose intersect, same as before. And that creates a perfectly aligned section that when we color, we can see it's got no overlapping elements and no other bits just jankily sticking out. So we'll do the same with the top here. We'll name this body top. And we'll grab somewhere where we don't have a point yet. So we can just start over there, to be honest. Click that section here, making sure there's a point. Click that section there, making sure there's a point. Bring that guy across, add a little bit of curve so he doesn't look super rigid. Now here, it's important that we align. So if we snap, you can see we can snap there. Bring that section over and then pull that out. Grab the body from the previous layer, select the body top, paste in place, grab both of them, choose intersect. And this time we're going to choose the lighter color, like so. So you can see the difference between these block color sections and these painted sections here where we've softened out everything. So we will get to that, it's just not in this step. So that's the main body of our lighter. We now need to start adding in all of the little extraneous sections here. So I try and do it from the ground up. Okay, so like the lid will be next and then other stuff from there. So we'll call this one Hinge, and we will create ourselves a nice rectangle, which we will zoom in and smooth the edges for. And then we can rotate this until it's roughly the same alignment as this section here. And we'll just shorten it to make that hinge. This will paint the same color as this body right section, like so. And why can't I see it? Oh, it's because I accidentally selected something where the opacity is way down. What did I select then? Oh, the sketch layer, I think. That'd be why. So there is our hinge. That's all good. That's why you can't eyedropper from here then, because you'll be eyedropping the 20% opacity layer. Should eyedropper from your color palette. Let's draw this lid. This lid is going to have to go under the hinge because it will be behind it. And we're just going to bring in a nice curve on that corner there. Looks good. Come up to this section, nice curve. Again, a nice curve. And around to here. Making sure there's no really harsh jagged edges or anything. And then collect that one up. Nice. Now we'll leave that one as it is, and we'll call this one lid base. And this color will be the sort of inside section here, which we'll paint later on to have a shadow so you can see it against the hinge. Above that, we're going to choose a new layer. We're going to mask out the rough section we want. like so. And we're going to draw in the top. Coming across, making sure there's no hard edge on the edge there. Good. Grab both of the base, copy and paste it onto this layer, select both, choose intersect, and choose a nice bright color for it. I think that one looks a bit better. So we'll do that. And we'll name this one lid top. Now we need a layer between lid top and hinge. And we can just start to roughly pop in this guy. So we don't actually need anything here to be accurate apart from where we want this edge to be. So we can line it up with there. Bring that in. And we'll make sure that this is painted the same color as the front. So this one should probably actually be that color. So that when we then select lid base, paste it on the same layer as lid front, select both of these, choose intersect. You can see we've got our colors good to go. Doesn't look too great like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this lid top layer. I'm just going to shimmy this one up a bit. Shimmy this point up a bit with the direct selection tool. And we're going to see how that looks. Oh, I don't know, because I like that curve. So I think what needs to happen is this point here needs to come down to match up with that point. And we can add that curve back in. There you go. That looks better. Again, we're going to be softening up all these colors later on anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to grab my hinge layer actually, and for now, I'm just going to make it a nice darker color just so we can see it against the rest of this stuff. And we're going to make sure that this lid front is below the hinge because the hinge sticks out a bit. There is lid front. So you can see our little guy starting to come together. Let's see what we've got else to draw. Let's do the legs. We'll do that underneath the body. So we'll grab one of our layers and we'll pop them under the body and we'll call him legs. These I am just going to pop on their own layer, and then later on if we need to separate them out, we can. So let's do that. Grab this guy, paint him the same color. We'll just add some shading later on. Come in here. And draw in some nice legs for our little lighter boy. And just to make sure that he looks as even as possible, what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I'm going to paint him the right color, which is this color. Oops, and again, I clicked the wrong layer there, so I'm going to drag that opacity back up. I'm just going to Alt and drag him to duplicate, then transform, reflect vertically to flop him around, and then we'll just spin this guy out so that he's got two legs that are the same size. All right, looks pretty good. Let's do the arm that's behind his body. So that needs a layer here, arm behind. And again, this one is just a case of grabbing your pen tool and tracing like so. So if you're feeling pretty comfortable, you can obviously do the rest of this without watching this video. But if you are following along with this design and you want to see how it's all done, then obviously you can follow along with me here as I'm creating this stuff. If you're a bit more confident, you can go off and do it by yourself with your own drawing. So that's arm behind, happy there. Now arm front is a bit difficult because we need some fingers that are above this stick and a bit that's below this stick. So we'll do that. On top of the body and on top of body right, we need a new layer. And we're going to call this arm front bot for bottom. And then we'll need another layer for arm front top. And then we'll need another layer for arm stick. So arm front bot first then. We're going to grab this guy. Create ourselves a nice little shoulder lump. Bring that around in a nice smooth way. Now I'm using the pen tool, but you can of course use the curvature tool if you find yourself a bit more familiar with that. And there you go. Oh, bless me. That spiked the audio. I'm very sorry, everyone. Hopefully that woke you all up. That is the arm front bottom, fine. Then on the arm front top layer, we'll draw all of his fingers. And then in between that, we can add the stick. So grab our pencil. Make sure we're aligning with the edge here, just so it's a nice smooth transition away from the arm. And we'll pop in this dude's big thumb. Nice. I'm going to make a new layer for the fingers, just so that we can add that nice bit of shading later on if we want to. And for the fingers, I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool, round off those edges, rotate them, and duplicate them into position. At least for these two. For the pinky finger, I think I'm going to have to do a pen. And I'm going to just have to choose where the edge of that pinky is going to be. Because obviously it's going to be in front of or behind of the stick. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Seeing as we're already over here, we'll do the stick next. So we've got arm, stick, and then we'll need some more layers for like the marshmallow and the like ends of the stick. No, that should do. Just stick and marshmallow for now. So we'll grab our pen tool and we'll just start to draw in this little stick, and hopefully it should all line up quite nicely with the hands that we've just drawn. That looks pretty good. Okay. That looks nice, apart from we don't want a green stick, preferably. We'd like a brown one. And there you go. We can see that the fingers and thumb are separate to the hand that goes underneath it. Awesome. Let's add in, just on the same layer, we'll just add in the ends of the stick here. We'll make that a nice brighter brown though. For some reason that's then gone onto the foreground layer. So I'll make sure we did all that on the right layer. Yes, we did. Paste that in place there. Rotate him around so that he's covering up the edge of the stick. That looks pretty good. Apart from we will just grab this individual point and align it to something. There you go. Looks a bit less rigid now. We'll also need one of these guys up here, just because of the way the angle of the stick is. So we'll just scale him up and position him until he covers up the end of the stick. Again, we can grab our individual points here and start tweaking them so it covers up the sections that we want. That's getting a bit high for me. He's a bit fat. So we'll just bring that down. Okay, the rest of the stuff we will add later, the rest of the texture. We will, however, add this marshmallow on its own layer, because we're going to have to add individual shading to the old marshmallow friend. I don't like how this bit sticks behind that corner, so I'm actually going to make this guy a bit shorter. And the way I did it before is I think I just brought this up and then I did like a splooged little S shape to indicate it's been stabbed on. I rounded off this section, pulled it out like that. Then I painted it a nice marshmallow color and shifted him up the stick a bit. And that looks pretty good to me. Maybe I don't like that little S. Maybe that just needs to be a normal stabbing shape. Yeah, that looks better. We'll just do that. Perfect. All right, final step then is this guy's face and his flames here. So let's do the face first. He's nice and cute. On top of body, I'm just going to do the face here. So we'll make a layer for the mouth. We'll make a layer for each eye. And we'll make a layer for the brows. Mouth is nice and simple. Again, it's just a cool little pen tool. Don't really want it to be this blue color though, so we'll make sure to fix that. By making it this sort of dark reddish color here. We also need to add in his blush, which we'll probably redo, to be honest, in After Effects. But we will just quickly add in some little blushing lines. Just so we know they're there. And then time to do the eye. For that, we'll obviously grab the ellipse tool. We'll Alt-Shift and reposition slightly. And we'll make this off-white. Then we'll Control-C, Control-F it. We'll shrink it down slightly and move it to the edge of the eye. We'll make it this nice dark color here. And then you guessed it, we're going to copy. We're going to paste in place. We're going to select both and choose intersect. And there you have our first eye. We can then just copy this and on the other eye layer, hit paste. We can rotate him around a little bit and reposition here. There you go. For the eyebrows, we'll grab our rounded rectangle tool again. We'll make them the same color as the blush and the mouth and stuff. And then we'll just position them nicely in an inquisitive little style. Huh? As he's toasting away, checking out his little marshmallows roasting. There you go. Looks pretty good. All right, last step then, the flames, the fun bit. This we're going to have to add under the stick layer because the stick might move in front of it. So we'll find where our arm stick layer is and we'll create a few new layers in here. I think about 5 should do. Maybe 6. So now we need the lighter top base. And we'll just grab our pen tool. And for this one, I think I did it all a shade darker. So the whole thing wouldn't be this color, it would be this one. And we're lucky at the moment because we've got that light bit on the top here for like the top of our lighter color. Why is he not looking so good? Because he's 19% rather than 100%. See, that's why you got to double check your things, right? He should be sort of that color, and he should be that color. And then he should also be below body top, should be below arm stick, and also below marshmallow. But now he's the same color as the marshmallow. With the shading, that's probably not a problem. What we will do, just for now, is we'll make him this kind of darkish color here. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. We'll do that as the color instead. Where was I? Lid top, don't care. Lighter top base. That's what we wanted. So we'll make the lighter top base this color from the front, and we'll turn on our sketch so we can see it. And we'll start to add this guy in. Remembering we're going to extend behind the flames because we're not really sure what we're going to be doing with the animation yet. So we'll draw the whole thing properly. No cutting corners. And there you go. So that is the lighter top base. We now need to do the same thing we did before with the right. So this will be lighter top right. Grabbing this guy. And this one we can be quite loose with up until... actually, we can be quite loose with it all because we're going to do a top section here anyway. So we can just do that. We'll make it the dark color. We can grab both layers. Excuse me, grab the bottom layer. We can paste it in place, grab both, intersect them, make sure this guy is on the right layer by itself, which he is, and pop it there. Somehow, again, he's behind body top. So we'd want body top to be below lighter base, but the stick to be above it. Now, lighter front's going to stay that color. So what we'll do is we'll turn lighter base to be this dark color here. Oops, excuse me. We'll select it from there. And now we'll add the front on. And the front will be nice and careful to get correct. So we'll have him swinging around like this. Around the front like this. And then around the back like that. And then we want it to be all the way around there. Now that bit I just need to tweak so that it does connect at least where I want it to. Then we can grab this, stick it on the right layer, which will be lighter top front. Paste in place. Paste in place, there we go. Copy lighter top bottom, paste it in place there. Grab this one, intersect them, choose our nice light color, ding, and see what we're working with. Okay, looks pretty good. This guy needs to move up a level so that he's covered there. And then we need to just draw in this top section. Now, one good way to do that is to select all three of these parts, copy and paste them onto a new layer. Excuse me, to a new layer. And we'll call this lighter top hole. Then we can go to our shape builder tool and we can merge these two shapes together and remove those two. And now we've got our shape that we need by itself. And there is the top of our lighter. Not super happy with it, not gonna lie, because I'm probably gonna want to shift these along like that. And just line them up a bit better with that shape. And that obviously means we'll need to adjust this guy underneath. Here. There we go. So that's all hidden away nicely. Cool, looks good. We will, on the same as the lighter top layer, lighter top front, this one, we'll add a new layer on top of that and we'll just say holes. And I think I did 4 holes, yeah, in this sketch version. So we'll grab our ellipse tool and line these up. He's a little bit at an angle to us so we can squish them horizontally somewhat. That guy would then have to move that way. And some holes there. Maybe something like that. Looks good. And we'll make these the same color as our nice dark color here. Pretty good. Actually, we'll maybe make that the nice dark. Yeah, that looks cool. All right, nice one. Now it's time for the flames, for which we will need 1, 2, and 3 layers. So we'll need flame bot, flame mid, and flame top. Now for this, I am going to go back to my curvature tool because I want them to be perfectly smooth. I'm going to grab a nice bold red color and I'm going to start going around here. Now this one, you can be as blazing as you want. Oops, excuse me. As blazing as you want. As long as you don't select any points on other shapes, it'll be nice and smooth all the way through, even if you click and drag a little bit. Who knew why I've gone Gloucestershire accent? Because I've been filming for ages and I'm losing my fucking mind. There we go. There is our base color. Flame mid. We'll make this nice toasty orange. And we'll do this shape here. And we'll also do a couple of these little circly bits. Some of the bigger ones. That's pretty good. And then flame top, we will do in this bright yellow color with the curvature tool selected. And we'll just do some nice additional flame elements, as well as one in the middle here, like that. Looks pretty good to me. And then you're ready for the big reveal. Boom. Our character created in Illustrator, ready to be brought into Photoshop to add texture. Now, I know that was really long. It's nearly an hour-long tutorial. But that's what this course is. It's a complete intro to. Hopefully you stuck around this long. If you have, thank you very much. You're very tenacious. I appreciate that and I respect it. And I'll see you for the second episode where we're going to be adding texture to this bad boy in Photoshop. So thanks very much, you guys, and I'll see you next time on TipTut.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.